Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Tarot Master Studio. My name is Marcy, and my guest today is Tina Porter. She and I are in a mediumship group together, and Tina graciously said, yes, I'll be interviewed. So, Tina, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hello, Marcy.
Hi. And yeah, we're just going to dive right on in, and please tell me how you started in tarot and what interested you to begin with the tarot anyway, to begin with.
That's a little bit hard to dig out because I've been reading tarot for over 20 years now. And actually started with cartomancy. In my teenage years, I had my usual pagan rebellion versus Christianity going. Some of the church teachings are completely effed up, and what else? And I was very much drawn to magic, so I hit every book on magic that wasn't stage sleight of hand that I could get from my local library systems, two different county systems, neither of which was the one I was living in, but they didn't care. And I got books on all kinds of divination, and cartomancy was the one that really stuck with me, the one I could manage. I have studied tea leaf reading, palm reading. I made notes, but I couldn't hold on to the information in my head. Whereas I couldn't hold a deck of cards and play Yukon Solitaire without reading them because it had stuck so thoroughly. So I think I was about 17 or 18 when I said, F this, and got my first deck, which was a very basic Rider-Waite deck because I had no idea what to do from there. And from there, it was basically sit and practice. And I played solitaire with tarot cards. It's one of the things I actually recommend for beginners. Take out the major arcana and play solitaire. It gives you a chance to look at the cards, think about it. Pentacles are diamonds, swords are spades, clubs are wands, and cups are hearts. And you just play. It takes a lot more thought, but that thought and practice, you get your energy into the cards, which I think helps a lot. Though I've had conversations about that with people, which I can get into a little bit later. And also, it gets you an idea what the cards look like, what the suits look like, how they progress, some basic meanings to them. I think that's basically where I started. I've grown a lot since then.
So when you have a deck, when you first purchase a deck, do you have any kind of ritual to bond with them, or what do you do?
Usually take them out, get them really well shuffled. Trying to think, it's been a while since it's just sit down, play with them a while, get them really well shuffled because you really want to get them randomized. And usually when you first buy them, they're not. And that shows up in the readings if you try to do them too fast. But other than that, no, I really don't have massive rituals. I just sit and play with the cards.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a ritual when you go to read for someone or do a reading?
I have usually when I'm reading for somebody else, if they don't know me, if it's the first time, it's more of a process of pointing out things. I do not want to know the question. They need to have a question in mind. I want to know the style of question so I can match the layout to the question. But I do not want to know the question itself. This I find helps me because I'm not answering the question off my conscious mind. I am reading the cards and coming up with whatever answer more accurately that way. Make sure they have that, and after making sure to shuffle the cards to make sure they're cleansed of any outside energies and nicely randomized, I hand them off for the person I'm reading for to shuffle. And like I said, there's also a discussion. I have a book of layouts. One moment. It looks really, really nice and thick and impressive. But this is book 2. My first book was about yay thick and got filled up. This was a gift from a friend as a thank you, and trying to see. how many? I have yay many layouts on this side, and I have all that blank space still.
So how do you go about creating a layout? Or some people know them as spreads. But how do you go about creating one?
Uh, geez, not very often. I'm part of, it's because of COVID, not active right now, but there is in Dayton, Ohio, a tarot group, and so most of my spreads are acquired from elsewhere, written by other people. When I've made layouts, there's several different ways I can end up doing it. I can be asked a question. It's like, do you have a layout for this? That's how I ended up with my sword spread, which is how do you deal with the conflict? Not what the conflict is, how do you deal with it? And it's a really interesting, it's like, give me give me a few minutes and a scrap piece of paper, and it just kind of flowed through really quickly. Another layout, mirror of self, that one was for the reading itself, it started out with, I was doing a reading and it was just me laying out a bunch of cards on the table. And after the reading was done, I left the cards and had to figure out which one were the qualifying, clarifying cards and which were the layout. And I wrote that one down based on that. And if you don't know, you have a spread or layout, and then you can add additional cards for clarification, hence clarifying cards. Really useful trick I got taught by somebody else back when I was early starting and had a few years of reading under my belt. It's like going, here's a trick. It's like, oh, nice trick. Very useful to know that you're not limited to the layout.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever used a fusion technique? This was taught to me by one of my early teachers, and basically, you lay down your first card, and then intuitively you lay down a card next to it, above it, below it, facing the left, facing the right. Just go with your intuition, and then just kind of end up with a random design. Have you used one of those, or?
Like I said, that's how
Okay.
I got the mirror self spread. Was it's
Okay.
like it was laid out randomly. There was no intent on my part of the shape or form it was going to be. There's so many ways to do layouts, and I think I've done a number
Mm-hmm.
of writing them. One was the shape just kind of comes. The first layout I ever created on my own, I flipped through a book on how to make tarot layouts, saw a picture of how the cards were laid out, and went, oh, and then assigned numbers to the cards and meanings to the cards in the layout. And then the second one I did was, let's take that first one, shrink, remove a card, and start from there. And that second layout's a fun one. And I have one page that's not layouts in my book.
Mm-hmm.
That's everybody who I can keep track of that's shown up in said layout. The layout's called Who Are You? It's a very simple 5 spread layout. You have 1 card in the middle, 2 to the left, and 2 to the right. The lower outer cards are unseen versus the upper cards, which are seen influences. The middle card is the major representation of whatever deity or force is trying to get a hold of you.
Oh.
And it's only a 5 card spread, but I have done lots of layouts, lots of clarifying cards. In fact, one person managed to go through about half a tarot deck playing question and answers with said goddess that showed up.
Oh, wow.
I bet I was like, wait, come on, I don't have to.
That sounds intense.
It was, but it was worthwhile. I was like, pulled a card, flipped it out, and I kept going, question, answer, but it worked really well. And it's like I said, it was my second layout I ever made, but it is so useful, and I've got a short list, particularly since some of the names are strange and weird, and some of the fun is I remember one card, it's like flipped over and up came the hangman, and I heard laughter. I mean, somebody was rolling on the floor laughing at the hangman. It's like going, oh wait, I know my mythology. The hangman is sometimes used to reference Odin and his sacrifice to himself on the tree to gain wisdom. Who would laugh at that? Oh yes, the one who asked him to sacrifice his eye.
Oh.
Because Odin went to Mimir's well, and Mimir demanded Odin make a sacrifice of his eye, and that's the only one who would laugh that hard at such. So he's one of the more interesting stories that came up.
Mhm. So do people need to know different types of mythology to get started, or um
To get started, it helps to learn the cards as you grow, but there's mythology that I have learned over time. If you're using like a Nordic deck or a Celtic deck or a Greek deck or something a deck that works mostly off of mythology, it's really useful to know that mythology. In fact, I have a fun story about a Nordic deck.
mhm.
I have a friend who's also true, knows the Eddas and the sagas forwards and backwards. I don't. He has a Nordic deck. I'm well known in my community as somebody who could borrow decks. As in, I can just pick up somebody else's deck and use it just fine. Except for this one. The deck wanted to communicate. It's like an anthologist like going, I have no idea what you're talking about. We were out at Wright State campus over in front of Millette Hall, if you know where that is. By the time he got over across the quad to Med-Sci, the deck stopped trying to talk to me in mythology and I could use it. But it's always been a story of the deck I couldn't use. If he was anywhere near, because it wanted to talk in mythology, and it's not very professional to say, and what's this myth? And what's
That's really cool. Um, so going on from the beginners to more of an intermediate to somebody who's had a couple of years under the belt, but with tarot, one of the reasons why I like it so much is that there's always something else to learn. There's always layer after layer after layer of something new to learn. So would you tell those folks who are intermediate and not quite master, or maybe they're heading towards their mastery in reading?
keep practicing, listen to the cards. Remember that the cards, just because they have a standard meaning, doesn't mean that's what you're supposed to be saying in the layout. And because I know I've had that a lot with, sometimes the card will say, yes, I know what the standard meaning is, but throw that out the wall. Let's swap that. I've had swords and wands want to switch themselves
Hmm.
back, and it's like meaning, it's like going, that's, you think you not confuse the Four of Wands with the Four of Swords, but they have different approaches and that, and it's just keep learning. It's keep learning. Don't dare stop think you've got it. I'm going, even masters need to keep learning.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So when you get a message while you're doing a reading, do you hear it? Do you see it? Do you smell it? Do you how do the spirits communicate with you?
Multiple ways. Sometimes I hear it, sometimes it's a knowing. You don't hear it, but you're just aware that this is the way it is, and that's what you need to say. Sometimes I see it. Sometimes it's an image right behind the eye. Sometimes it's an image overlaying the card. The challenge is when you get images is how do you turn it into words that you can share? And that's and it's been yeah. Some of the readings are just been I remember one, I didn't realize the age of the person being asked about because I had a woman across from me. She had a daughter who was pregnant and she was asking questions. And I ended up actually, the reading was based on the as yet unborn, like a couple months shy of birth. I knew the birth was going to go fine because it was just a quick little 3-card spread, past, present, future, but the future was the Queen of Pentacles, and the woman I was reading for was of African descent, and I saw that Queen of Pentacles. She was just a beautiful African queen, and I think I saw that more in the back of my head than on the card, but it's like going, wow, you're right. Yep, that's a girl, and she is going to be she's going to be wonderful and annoying at the same time. She's going to be strong and powerful. It's just great and also frustrating when you have to deal with that in a child.
Mhm. Um, so going back to the cartmancy again, um, how did you graduate from using the playing cards to tarot cards?
Well, like I said, I got sick and tired of not being able to play solitaire with reading, so I got the first deck, and it just the challenge is jacks can be pages or knights
Mm,
in the 78 card system, and I had to learn the major arcana. Beyond that, it was just a really easy, and like I said, I've studied lots of forms of divination, tried to learn to scry, palmistry, just nothing stuck. But cards, it was so much easier, and I still very much prefer a good 78 card tarot deck over playing cards. So I can still read playing cards. It's fun, especially when you get decks that are not intentionally tarot based, that have
mhm,
artwork on them that varies from card to card, but isn't intentionally tarot meaning set up. And that can add another interesting layer to the readings.
mhm.
I
Have you used the Marseille deck?
don't think so.
It's very similar to playing cards in that you really don't have a scene, but rather you have the number of pentacles or cups or wands. So that's how they are very similar to a playing card as opposed to the Rider Waite.
No, I haven't done that. And I do have one Oracle deck, which is interesting. It's one Oracle deck spoke to me, but mostly I stick to the 78 cards. And Oracle decks have their own learning curve to them. I've seen Celtic animal decks, goddess decks. And Oracle decks are a different challenge because you have to sit and learn most of the decks by themselves.
Hmm.
Whereas
Hmm.
tarot, what artwork appeals to you?
Hmm. Yep. Yeah. Ellen and I had that conversation when I interviewed her. She's one who has just very few decks. I'm one of those that I I collect decks. Some of them I know I'm definitely going to use, while others I know are more of a novelty. And I just like the artwork, but I don't think these are really functional, or at least functional for me. So what about you? Are you a deck collector?
Yes, no, I right now have 4 decks. How many decks I've had over my lifetime, I would have to sit down and think hard because I've used some decks for a while and passed them on. I've held on to some decks and used the second deck I ever purchased, the Tarot of the Old Path. I still have it and use it because I fell in love with it. It has beautiful elemental themed artwork. I think I saw the chariot, and you got 4 horses, each designed to represent one of the elements, and it was beautiful.
Mm,
And the magician is this shaman-like figure right side outside of Stonehenge with next to a fire where a wolf's coming out of it, and it is just, I love it, and it's starting to show its age because I'm pretty sure it's close to 20 years now.
Mhm.
But I love it. I was gifted with the Housewife's Tarot because I do spend some of my time. I am also a kitchen witch and do thread magic too. And the Housewife's Tarot is a 1950s style theme, and it's really funny, but it's also one of those, I have found working with it, you have to treat it with respect, or we'll show you exactly how well a housewife knows how to use its knives. Because it can be quite nasty and vicious, but most of those I use it around are quite respectful. I have one friend who refers to it as the ladies. Because like I said, it looks like a 1950 housewife, but it is fun, and really the makers of that had a fun spread called the Martini spread, which I enjoy because it's like a Celtic cross. It's very basic general, but it's 13 cards instead of 10, and it's just got a little bit more detail. It's really fun to do. Let's see. And then I also have the Impressionist Tarot, and because I'm also very elemental, the Tarot of the Four Elements, and once again, but I love that one because I've noticed a lot of the decks can be heteronormative and such, and also very European because everybody's very pale. Whereas Tarot of the Four Elements is very tribal, gender fluid. So I really love beautiful colors, very elemental based, and also very not heteronormative or European centric.
Mhm.
And I love it for that too.
Mhm. Um, Switching gears a little bit, how has reading tarot helped you personally in terms of either just your own personal development, or you've been able to help yourself in certain ways or help other people in certain ways? So how has tarot affected you in that way?
It is a wonderful system. I've been pointed out because I'm working on answering a call to ministry, and I had pointed out by a UU, formerly United Methodist minister, that the tarot embodies a wonderful collection of archetypes. So it is because I was thinking, oh no, tarot and pastoral care don't go together. Okay. Like I said, he had 20 some years in the United Methodist Church before he became a Unitarian Universalist minister. But he said, no, don't use the tool. And I have found that a lot of times tarot reading is pastoral care. It helps to open up conversations, helps provide guidance. I know I've used it at some points in my life. Sometimes instead of trying to read for myself, I hate doing that because I know the question and I can read into it, but having somebody else read for me, answer questions, and it's been interesting I know when it comes up in my Facebook memories, there's the post of the car. What do you think tarot is? I can see the past, present, and future perfectly. Reality. Cards called me the F out again. Because that's what tarot does. It's like sometimes it's a smack upside the head, but it's a direction of here. You're going the wrong direction. Here's the direction you need to go. I love tarot for that because, and I'll also say, tarot is not always about seeing the future. Sometimes it's seeing about the past and present much more clearly.
Hmm.
And the layout, I said, the self-reflection is a very backwards looking. How did you get here? Then it's here's kind of where you're headed. Do you want to go there? But most of it's how in the heck did you get here? How did your heart lead you here? How did your head lead you here?
Hmm.
And it's like really useful. And I've gotten, oh, wow, that helps. Thank you. Not
Yeah,
that it's always what you want to hear, mind you, but it's what you need to hear. And a good
exactly.
reader will tell you not what you want to hear. And I've had a couple of people, I could have told them exactly what they wanted to hear because they made it quite clear what they wanted to hear. But my ethics as a reader were, no, I will tell you what the cards say
Mm-hmm.
because that's what you need to hear.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So how do you handle difficult conversations with a client?
Usually with as much honesty and tact as I can.
Mhm.
I'll be honest, because it's best. It's like, and I've actually found most the difficult clients are usually not the paying ones. They're the ones who want this information, all this for all this skill and the answers they want to hear, but they don't want to actually bother paying you for this. And I do remember once did for a friend, first reading, came up with advice, but really didn't answer the question asked. Second time, the answer came up flat out no. They didn't like that answer. They wanted another reading. I gave the same answer the cards did. No.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yep.
don't want to listen? I'm not spending the
Yep.
energy doing it.
Yep.
Now
Yeah.
that, and I thought the first reading gave some really good advice of what to do. Whether it's taken or not is not in my power, and I will not do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I've had friends. It's always my friends, the friends, who will ask for a reading, and yeah, sure, we'll do a reading. And I had one in particular. There was a stretch of time where she was seeing somebody, and of course, she was always asking about that particular relationship, and the answers always were not what she wanted to hear. And so time and time again, and finally I had to tell her, if you want a different answer, go find a different reader because this is what I'm always getting. And sure enough, she saw somebody else, and that person gave her the same forecast that I have been giving her. So yeah, in those moments, definitely you can't take it personal because it's whatever stuff that they're dealing with. That's what they're dealing with. But I guess that does come to another question where how do you handle when a person may take out the answers out on you personally when you're just reading the cards, you're just and I guess maybe your reaction might be different with a stranger or new client versus an old friend, or maybe you just handle it across the board the same.
It's pretty much a one of those. It's also where I have to take care of myself
Hmm.
and make sure to not take it personally. So I remember one very tricky reading. It's like going, all the clarifying cards could say was, I can't tell you where this person is going to jump because that person hasn't decided where they're going to jump. And I'm sorry. That's the best I can do for you. And made sure not, it's like, wasn't my fault. I was as accurate as possible,
Hmm.
but made sure to not take it personally because I'm the in between. Like
Hmm.
with mediumship, I'm the in between the great beyond and the person and the client in front of me. Friends haven't given me that much trouble, but I think that's because most of my friends read themselves
Okay.
at some level
Hmm.
that I'm reading for, and I might get grumbling and griping, but it's never directed at me personally.
Hmm. So go ahead.
I was going to say though it can be fun because before the pandemic, the CUPS, Covenant of Unitarian Universalist Pagans chapter that I was part of, I'd often lead rituals and sometimes do that. And it's fun when you get uh, sudden giggles as you're trying to guide everybody through reading the card that they just pulled out of the deck. It's like going, what? It's like, and knowing the person's not being intentionally disrespectful. It's just, and then finding the card and going, okay, never mind. Maybe I should have picked a different deck because the giggles were focus on, especially with the focus on, is there something major in the artwork that stands out to you? And the Impressionist Tarot, I think it's about the Eight of Pentacles. You have a naked woman lying back on a chaise with 8 ribbons on the wall next to her. It's the giggles.
Yep. Yep, I would be giggling too.
It's like I was trying to figure out what the giggles were, and then it's like going, oh wait, never mind. Let me explain the card.
Yeah. So how do you take care of yourself in between readings, or while you're doing a reading, before you do a reading?
Well, make sure to stay hydrated, and if it's a long day, make sure to take breaks for meals or snacks, and make sure to stay hydrated, because that can be a problem very easily, to get caught up in going reading after reading. It's also useful to have something like a piece of selenite, which is a nice little crystal that helps cleanse the cards, so you don't have to spend as much energy clearing one client's energy out from the next. It helps so you're not getting readings mixed up, as the residue of first reading shows up in the second or the third. So you do that. On really long days, I try to make sure that I'm working on my own personal energy, making sure that's cleansed as well, and I'm grounding any excess energy, because sometimes that can be pulled up really easily, or I am pulling up energy if I'm feeling low. But be aware of self. Take a few minutes between each reading, not just for the client interaction, but for the stop. Where are you at in your energy? I worked at a pagan pride day, and I loved the fact that they stuck me right next to a tree. Tree and
Oh,
I swapped energy all day, and I had a nice lunch break. I got to attend the opening ritual. And yeah, I was busy, and it would have been exhausted, but like I said, I played swap energy with Tree. I dumped off any excess, and I was granted, because I did ask permission. Consent is required.
mm-hmm.
Asked nicely, I asked nicely, and I was shared. So that helped a lot, because it can be exhausting constantly channeling all that information through.
Mm-hmm.
And I've also noticed that sometimes you get a card or two that speak, that will give you a couple encyclopedias worth of information. Other cards might give you a word or two if you're lucky,
Mm-hmm.
within the same layout.
Mm-hmm.
And to know that's normal. There is
Yep.
nothing wrong with that.
Yep. Yep. So it looks like we've been talking for about 42 minutes. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up soon. Do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to share with folks? And do you currently accept new clients? And if so, I'm more than happy to put your information down in the description.
I'm not actually reading anywhere at the moment. I'm going to say, once the social distancing limits get lifted, I will be back. You can find me on the third Thursday of the month at the Beaver Creek Fairfield Mall Panera, from 7 to whenever, usually, and I'll do readings there. I don't charge money right now, because I'm just more of a casual reader at this point in my life. And anything else, I'd like to throw off one beginner myth. You do not have to be given your first deck. That's a lot of baloney. Some people have a talent for tarot, not everybody does. There are other forms of divination. that will work just as well. Do what calls to you. Find artwork, and also, if you're tempted, there's a Hobbit deck that absolutely sucks. A lot of the artwork is to fit into the theme, not to match the card. So be warned. And that's not just my opinion. We passed the decker out of it. Nope, this is a horrible deck.
Mhm.
That's the only deck I will say that's an absolutely horrible deck. There are ranges of color, race, whatnot. Find a deck that, if you're looking to start a deck, find one that calls to you.
Mhm.
One that you like the artwork of, because you're going to be staring at it for a long time.
Yeah. It's true. So, okay, well, we're coming up at almost 45 minutes, and this has just been a great conversation. I really learned a lot. I had no idea, or hadn't even thought about using the tarot cards as solitaire cards, or playing solitaire with their tarot cards. That's a great one. So that's one takeaway I'm definitely leaving with. And then the other one is uh, not asking the question, having your client, your quorn, ask the question, and then you just go on from there. I had not thought about that. I'm gonna have to try that with some people, see how that goes. So thank you for those nugget of wisdoms, or wisdom of nuggets, nuggets of wisdom, nuggets of wisdom.
You had it right the first time.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Tina. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. This is again Marcy with Tarot Master Studio, and Tina Porter has been my guest today, and we will see you soon. Thank you.